Imagine this. Your partner's feeling pretty down in the dumps recently, and to make themselves feel a bit better, they buy themselves a new sweater. And this sweater is disgusting. It's hideous. It's the worst thing you've ever seen. It's borderline offensive. And then they ask you that question, oh, what do you think? Well, that is a little bit of a dilemma for you. What do you do? There's a couple of options. You can be honest and say what you really think, or you could be compassionate and say, you know, it looks great, you be you. This is a classic moral dilemma. You're stuck between two morals, between honesty and compassion. You can't do it in equal measure. If you're going to be honest, you're going to have to sacrifice some of that compassion. And if you're being compassionate, well, you're going to kind of have to lie a little bit and surrender that honesty. Now, with your partner and with mine, maybe we know what to do. And that is actually a skill that's called Phronesis, or in modern terms, it's called practical wisdom or good sense. And what that is that you have the ability to read the situation and know what the right course of action is. Is it right to be honest in this situation, or right to be compassionate? This is a skill that we can develop at school. This is a skill that we can develop in education. And why do we do that? Well, in an Aristotelian character education approach, the real aim for the education is for people to not just have a happy life, but to really flourish. And Aristotle believed that we need to have this practical wisdom in order to flourish. And as schools, is our ultimate aim to develop the competencies and the academic skills of students, or is it also to give them the platform that they're able to flourish in their lives in school and then later on outside of school? And character is a choice. So in this situation, you choose to be honest, you choose to be compassionate. And that's important to remember, because we have loads of parts of us and skills and behaviors and personality that all kind of get conflated in this semantic mess. So we have to understand what character is, and character is when you choose something for the right moral outcome. So for example, if you're extroverted or introverted, that's not a choice you have. You are that. You can't help that. But you can choose to be kind to someone. You can choose to be brave. You can choose to be resilient. Alternatively, with behaviors, some people are impulsive. Some people are very organized. And that isn't something they're choosing. You can try to be less impulsive, or you can try to be more organized. But the fact is, there are people out there that are more organized than others, and it's not a choice. So with character is only interested in developing the skills in the moral format. So it's a choice. It's always a choice. So then we think, okay, well, let's just choose to be honest all the time. Let's just choose to be kind, choose to be compassionate. Let's do that all the time. Well, as you see in that first scenario, you can't be honest all the time, because you will sacrifice compassion. And maybe that situation needs compassion. You can't do that. And that's the skill that we can develop during and with character education. When we look at this choice with honesty, it's this golden middle. It's this safe space in between two negative character traits. And we have honesty bang in the middle. And then not enough honesty, we get deceit. And that's obvious. We know what the negative ramifications for deceit is. But is that too much of a good thing? Well, with honesty, if you're too honest, maybe you lack compassion. Maybe you're too brash. Maybe it isn't refreshing to hear what you think at that moment in time. Your friend might just want a hug or a pat on the back and say it's all going to be okay. But if you're honest all the time and choose honesty all the time, maybe that isn't the morally right thing to do. And it's the same as bravery. You've got bravery in the middle. Not enough bravery is cowardice. And too much bravery, that could be foolhardiness. Being irresponsible, it could be naivety, recklessness. Equally, just as a negative trait as cowardice. So there can be too much of a good thing. And that's what Phronesis is that skill to determine what is the right thing to do at the right time. Because maybe in that situation, it's not the morally right thing to be brave. And we develop this through a character education program. In schools, we can help develop this skill. And as we said, as we develop these skills, we can make the right choices, and that can help us flourish. And it makes sense. It makes sense because if we are constantly making the morally right decision with the people around us and for ourselves, the people around us and us will be happier. We will flourish. And it's no surprise that in one's own quest to find happiness, the most successful and the best way of becoming happy ourselves is to make someone else happy. So it's no surprise that if we're able to make the right choices in our social situations and our interpersonal relationships, then we'll more likely end up flourishing or thriving in our lives. And that's ultimately what we're doing as teachers and as educators in trying to develop that culture for students to develop into a flourishing individual. So you might say, well, we didn't have character education at school and I turned out all right. And maybe we did. Maybe we didn't as well. And the fact is we do all have shortcomings if we're honest with ourselves. Famous moral crusader Benjamin Franklin famously said that he felt like he developed all of his morality apart from humility. He couldn't be genuinely humble. And he learned how to fake it, but he was honest and said, look, I can't do that. So we all have some improvement and development that we can do in our whole life. And that's what character development is. We are a never-ending story. We can always, always, always develop. Plus, we have to be real in our social circumstances now are different than when we grew up. We have a highly digital world now, where we have less interpersonal communication and interactions, skills that we miss sometimes without seeing facial expression or body language or smiling. And we rely often on technological interactions, which can impact how we read situations. It can impact our phronesis development because we're not learning and modeling those skills. We also have the workplace now. We hear expressions such as hire for character, train skill, character over competence, or attitude over competence. It's more part of our conversation now, character. Even sports people will say, we showed real good character there. That person has good character. We showed strength, determination, grit. We showed all these character traits. Even in our schools, our accreditations and inspections have an element of character. They're observing how we develop and educate character. So now it's part of the conversation, a bit more than it was a few years back. And this is therefore important for us to start to consider at schools generally, to how important this is on the impact of our children. When we think about the mental health and the struggles that we have in adult life and even in adolescence, it's not always academic struggles or work task struggles. They exist, but it's a lot of how we communicate with others, relationships, how they are difficult, and can we provide children with the skills to be able to navigate through these difficult, challenging, tricky relationships and conflicts that everyone is ultimately going to experience. So it is important that we start to look at these skills. We look at our world and there's some amazing things about our world. But currently right now there's some tough things too that we all have to try to go through. We have increasing polarization, political polarization, which is spreading hate, where people are one side or the other. You're with me or you're against me. We have a frightening increase in depression, in mental health challenges, suicides, bodily harm in adolescence because of that invention of the social media and the smartphone, where we're constantly looking at our social status and how we look. These weren't problems that existed 20 years ago. We have an increasing amount of youngsters or young adults who quit their first job out of university within the first 6 months. It's too tough. That transition into the work life is too tricky. So how can we solve some of these issues? Well, we can't just say, okay, let's get rid of social media. Let's get rid of the smartphone. That's here to stay. So how can we combat this? I believe that we can do that with character. I believe that we can really mitigate some of those negative elements. It's not going to solve it all, but can we do something? And should we, as schools? Can we develop compassion, some self-compassion and some resilience, so that when our identity or our social status or how we look gets challenged, we're able to deal with that, we're able to reconcile with some of those challenges easier? Can we do that? Can we develop the skills of compassion and kindness and tolerance when we're listening to ideas that we don't agree with or we don't understand? Can we have some openness so that we can challenge some of our inherent biases? So ultimately, we can work towards trying to do what's best for our society. Can we do that? Should we do that? Can we develop resilience and some grit and some kindness to ourselves so that when the hardships of the work life and working and becoming that real responsible adult happen, that it can take some of that pressure off that we've put on ourselves, so that when struggles do happen within the workplace, we can get through it. And I believe that some of the great things in life can be lifted and supported by good character, and some of those tough moments that we'll inevitably have to experience can be dampened and be resolved or helped with some development of good character. And as schools, we are this conduit between childhood and young adulthood. And within that, I really believe that along with the context and all of the competencies and skills and academic knowledge that they are going to take in, we should also give them the best platform to not only succeed academically and in the career they do, but also in who they are as a person and how they're going to develop morally. And that is what I believe, that we can get through this by showing some character.